You've been at this for 3 months, 40 applications sent, resume rewritten twice. One interview, it seemed to go well. Then 2 weeks of complete silence. No rejection, no update, just nothing. You assume you did something wrong. You probably didn't. Here's what's actually happening. The hiring process isn't designed to find the best person. It's designed to reduce uncertainty as fast as possible. And once you see that mechanism clearly, almost everything that seems confusing or arbitrary about job searching stops being confusing. You do the work. You show up. You send the applications. You rewrite the resume. You prepare for the calls. And the silence still comes. That's not a you problem. That's a structure problem. And there's a specific reason it keeps happening that has nothing to do with your effort or your qualifications. There's something most candidates never figure out about hiring. The process has a shape, and almost nobody on the outside ever sees it. This video is going to show you that shape, not the version companies put on their careers pages, but the operational reality recruiters live inside every single day. Here's the specific thing you're going to understand by the end. There's one moment inside every hiring process where your outcome gets quietly decided. It doesn't happen in an interview room. It happens in a conversation you're not part of about a candidate you don't know exists. By the end of this, you'll know exactly when that moment occurs, what's actually being decided, and what you can do about it before it happens. What's missing right now is an effort. It's the map. Recruiters are measured. Like any function inside a company, their performance gets tracked against specific numbers. Two of the most important are offer extend rate and offer accept rate. How many offers go out, and how many of those offers actually get accepted? That second number is the one that shapes recruiter behavior in ways most candidates never anticipate. Here's where it gets interesting. This is what you could call the acceptance signal, the set of cues a recruiter reads, consciously or not, to assess how likely you are to say yes if they extend an offer. If a recruiter consistently extends offers that get turned down, that's a performance problem. So when a candidate clearly demonstrates they want this role, asking substantive questions, showing visible alignment, treating the conversation like a conversation rather than an audition, that candidate gets prioritized. Not because the recruiter likes them more, because moving them forward is lower risk. The process accelerates for people the recruiter is confident about. Rounds get scheduled faster. Decisions get made faster. Your perceived enthusiasm doesn't just affect how they feel about you. It affects the operational speed of your entire evaluation. Think about what that looks like in practice. You're in a first-round call, and you ask, what does success look like for this role in the first 90 days? And where does the team currently have gaps? That question does three things simultaneously. It signals genuine interest, it tells you what they actually need, and it makes you easier to move forward on. The recruiter isn't just listening to your answer. They're watching how you engage. You are not just being evaluated. You are being assessed for fit with a metric the recruiter is accountable for. That's a different game than most candidates think they're playing. But the game starts before that call ever happens. It starts the moment someone looks at your resume, and what happens in those first 6 seconds determines everything that follows. Walk into any room where you don't know anyone. Within seconds, people have already formed a read on you before a single word is spoken. Your resume operates on exactly the same mechanism. When you submit an application, a recruiter doesn't read it. They scan it, a quick visual pass, maybe 6 seconds, to determine whether it looks like the kind of document that belongs in the yes pile. That's the entire first filter. This is the visual pass problem, and it's why most of the advice you've heard about resume design is working against you. Headshots, color blocks, multiple columns, graphics, these feel like they should signal effort and professionalism. They don't. What they actually signal is friction. And friction gets you moved past faster. It sounds simple. It isn't. Here's the next part, and this is what most candidates never figure out. Many companies use applicant tracking software to manage applications. Workday is one of the most common. It was originally built as HR infrastructure, and applicant tracking was layered on afterward, which is why it behaves strangely in certain situations. One of those situations: if your resume has more than one column, the system often can't extract the data correctly. Your information gets scrambled or lost before a human ever sees it. A resume that looks polished and considered on your screen may be arriving as incoherent text on theirs. Keep it single column, professional font, clean formatting, no images. If you're applying in the United States, no headshot. And here's the deeper point most candidates miss entirely. The document isn't a list of things you've done. It's not a timeline of tasks. It's the answer to one question: why are you the right fit for this specific role? No interpretive work required. The match needs to be visible immediately, because if a recruiter has to infer it, the answer is already no. But here's the thing: even a perfectly formatted, precisely targeted resume runs straight into a structural reality that almost nobody talks about. Here's a number that reframes the entire system. On average, roughly 75% of people who apply for any given job are not actually qualified for it. Not borderline, not almost there. Genuinely not meeting the minimum requirements. This is the disqualification economy, and it explains why recruiters cannot treat your application the way you want them to. When you're processing hundreds, sometimes thousands of resumes per day across 10 or 20 open roles simultaneously, you can't carefully evaluate every document. The first pass is a disqualification sweep, not a selection process. The job isn't to find who belongs. It's to eliminate who doesn't as quickly as possible. Here's where it gets structural. Companies that function as government contractors or subcontractors, which includes some of the largest employers in the country, are legally required to follow OFCSP guidelines. Those guidelines state that candidates must meet the minimum qualifications listed in the job description to be considered at all. There is no discretion in that. If you apply and you don't meet the minimum requirements, you are not in the pool. That's not a policy preference. That's a compliance rule. So when you apply for a role and receive a rejection within 30 seconds, the most likely explanation isn't a broken ATS or an indifferent HR department. It's that a recruiter happened to be actively reviewing that role right when your application came in, did a quick scan, saw the minimum qualifications weren't met, and moved on. That's not personal. That's volume management inside a compliance structure. You already know something doesn't add up. You're qualified. You're applying. The silence still comes. Here's what that actually tells you. The disqualification economy is clearing people who never should have applied, and your application is getting caught in the same sweep because the match isn't immediately visible on the surface, even when you genuinely are the right person. Clarity isn't optional. It's the only thing that survives the first pass. But even when it does survive, even when you get through the resume filter, clear the phone screen, and perform well in interviews, you can still not get the job. And the reason has nothing to do with your qualifications. You can have a strong resume. You can meet every requirement. You can perform well across every round and still not get the offer. This is the composition problem, and it's one of the least visible forces in the entire hiring process. Recruiters and hiring managers aren't evaluating you in isolation. They're looking at you relative to the team you'd be joining. Every team has a composition, existing strengths, existing weaknesses, specific gaps that are creating friction or limiting output. The hire they make is designed to address those gaps, not simply add another qualified person. Here's a real scenario. Imagine a team where the two strongest performers are both exceptional executors, disciplined, process-oriented, reliable. The team delivers consistently but struggles when the roadmap isn't clear or when new problems need framing. The gap isn't technical, it's strategic thinking. The next hire is almost certainly going to be evaluated for that quality above everything else, even if the job description doesn't say so, because job descriptions rarely describe the actual problem. The selection isn't about your absolute qualifications. It's about whether your specific profile fills what's currently missing. The person whose profile most closely matches that shape gets the offer. The person with slightly stronger credentials, but the wrong shape, doesn't. It looks like merit. It isn't. You don't automatically know what that shape is, but you can find out. During the interview process, ask the hiring manager directly, where does the team currently have weaknesses? What's not working? What do they hope this person brings that isn't already there? Those answers tell you what the role actually is, as opposed to what the job description says it is. And they give you a chance to demonstrate relevance to the real problem, not just the posted one. But even when you do all of that, even when you surface the real problem and position yourself against it, there's still one more thing that can derail your process entirely. And it happens after you've already done everything right. Your interview process goes quiet. Things that were moving stop moving. A week passes, then another. You follow up. You get a vague response about timelines. You start wondering what you did wrong. Usually, nothing. Here's what's actually happening. This is the parallel track problem. And this is the moment in the hiring process where your outcome often gets quietly decided without your knowledge. Another candidate entered the process based on what the recruiter and hiring manager could see at that moment. That candidate looked like a stronger match or a faster one, which is functionally the same thing. So they fast-tracked that person, compressed the interview stages, prioritized the scheduling, accelerated the decision timeline. Your process didn't stall because of anything you did. It stalled because someone else got moved to the front. If that fast-tracked candidate performs the way they expected and accepts the offer, your process ends quietly. No call, no explanation. It just stops. If that person falls apart in later rounds or turns the offer down, your process may suddenly start moving again with no explanation for why it went dormant. None of this gets communicated to you. You're in a holding pattern while a parallel decision gets made. It feels like feedback. It isn't. Remember what was said at the beginning about a specific moment where your outcome gets quietly decided? This is that moment. It doesn't happen in an interview room. It happens in a conversation between a recruiter and a hiring manager that you're not part of, about a candidate you don't know exists, based on comparative judgments you never had the chance to influence. You can't control the parallel track, but you can control how visible and how compelling your position is before that conversation happens, which is why everything in this video connects back to the same underlying principle. The process is moving fast, under constraint with imperfect information, and it defaults to whoever looks most certain at the moment a decision needs to be made. Be the certain option early, because by the time silence arrives, the decision is usually already done. So here's what you're actually dealing with. A recruiter managing volume who is partly optimizing for their own accept rate, a 6-second visual filter that punishes complexity, a disqualification sweep that's processing hundreds of applications at once under compliance constraints, a hiring decision shaped by team gaps that nobody disclosed to you, and a parallel track that can quietly end your candidacy while you're still waiting to hear back. None of these are hidden malice. They're operational pressures, constraints inside a system that was built to move fast and reduce risk, not to find the best person. The job search feels personal because the stakes are personal. It isn't personal. It's structural. Understanding that doesn't make the silence easier, but it does change what you do next. You stop trying harder at the parts that don't matter. You start optimizing for the moments that do, the clarity of your match on paper, the signal you send in the first call, the questions you ask when you have a hiring manager in front of you. The effort was never the problem. The map was. If you want to keep understanding how organizations actually work, not how they say they work, that's what this channel is for. There's more here on performance reviews, internal mobility, and why the people who get promoted aren't always the ones doing the most work. The system has a logic. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.